Hey guys, it's Nathan from Arms of Elam, and I am here today with a really exciting saber build. At first glance, it may look kind of boring. Yeah, it's another Vader. I've done so many of these Vader conversions, and I brought them to you guys, and I know a lot of them I don't even show you at this point because they really are kind of, they've become, the process has been proven. I've shown you guys what the builds are like, and I'm not really changing a whole lot on them right now. But this one is different than just about all the others in that it is a NeoPixel saber. I just completed this for a customer who was looking for really arguably the ultimate Vader build, or at least a very accurate Darth Vader that was still at a reasonable price point, still more affordable than using like the MPP 2.0 kits. And as I mentioned in the past, there are some things about this Black Series hilt, and that is what it is. I guess I should have mentioned that in the opening. This is a Hasbro Black Series conversion to a NeoPixel. But there are some things about this Black Series Darth Vader that are a little bit more accurate than even the MPP 2.0. So without further ado, let's talk about what this build entails. First off, as I mentioned, yes, it is a NeoPixel saber. It uses the PlecterPixel adapters that are available at the custom saber shop. And one of the things I did that was a little bit different here than you might see on most PlecterPixel builds is that I actually, let's see if I can get it to come out. So you've got the PlecterPixel adapter right here. And I went ahead and inserted it into the front of the conversion kit, which is also one of the custom saber shop's Darth Vader conversion kits. And when I was doing the original build planning, I actually intended to insert it into the back of the conversion and drill and tap a hole, and then have these pins extend. And here you can see them. These are spring-loaded pins that engage a kind of a target-shaped adapter on the blade that I'll show you shortly, with the data being in the middle, and then you've got your positive and negatives on the outside. But regardless, my original plan was to put this in the back of that conversion, drill and tap a hole to retain it, and have those pins extend up into the blade socket. But what I found was, one, the pins aren't all that long. They don't protrude too far out of this adapter, and I started to kind of worry that maybe that would mean I wouldn't get a good positive electrical connection between the adapter and the blade. So I inserted it through the front of the conversion kit. Now what that meant was, one, I did consider drilling and tapping a hole to retain it in here. There's a reason why I didn't do that. I'll get to that in a moment. But the other thing I ran into is that meant, by putting it into the actual blade holder, that meant that I was reducing the amount of socket depth that you get for the blade, which means you don't have as much support. You might get a little bit of wobble, and your blade might not be quite as secure, even though these kits are very tight. So what I ultimately did was further modified the adapter itself, and really what I did was I cut it down to about half height. And what that allowed me to do was still have the adapter in place, but now I'm only looking at about 1/4 of an inch of reduced socket depth. So you've still got over 1.5 inches of blade socket, which is more than enough for even dueling if you were to use this saber. The other reason I didn't drill and tap a retention screw for this unit is because now I can service it through the front. So if something were to happen to this adapter, it can just be serviced through the front of the saber. You don't have to try and hammer out the blade adapter, the conversion kit from the custom saber shop. You just can pull this out and fix whatever needs fixing. Hopefully it's never necessary, but I just didn't want to have to deal with that if any problems ever arose. And then reinserting it is rather simple. You just kind of jam it down in there, and the wires will find their way. Honestly, it's not something that's going to be necessary most of the time anyway, because typically everything will be I mean, typically that will stay right in place, and if you've got the retention screw here, this knurled screw tightened down, that adapter can't even escape out the front, so it's really a non-issue. So something to think about, or something to be aware of when the saber arrives, is that can slide out the front, and that is by design. Alright, so we've got that at the front, which is PlecterPixel adapter, the conversion kit. In the back of the saber, we've got one of my custom chassis, a NEC Spark 2 R3 board, which is a little bit different than the Plecter Labs boards that I normally use. The Spark was chosen because it has a few additional features that the customer wanted, mainly the blade lockup effects, in addition to just the standard clash, and then the blaster deflect. Really, the Spark 2 R3 is a really fully featured board, comparable to higher end or more expensive boards, at least from a feature set standpoint. There are some things I don't like about the NEC boards though. One, they're a little bit large. You'll see that once I take this thing apart or open it up, and you'll get a chance to kind of see just how long they are in comparison to the Nano Biscottis and such that I typically use. They're also a little bit wide, and beyond all of that, the most aggravating part is actually that they're rather thick. They have components on both the top and the bottom of the board, meaning that when I try and attach them to the chassis with like the 3M foam adhesive, basically that board sits fairly high, and I start to worry about it shorting against the hilt. So I did take some measures to prevent that from happening, but it's just not the most elegant design. I would love to have all those components on one side or the other, but without further ado, so we've got the chassis, the custom chassis, the Spark 2 R3, a 28mm bass speaker, an 18650 lithium-ion battery. This is the Keep Power High Drain model. It's actually a Sony VTC6 cell for those of you who are battery nerds. So really great battery. I believe it's 15 amp drain. This saber is not going to reach 15 amps even if you're running on full blast white. So really the perfect battery, although I will warn you, it does drain really fast. I mean, this saber can run through the battery extremely fast. So something to think about. That's why the battery is actually removable. So if you're at a con, if you're trooping, you can pull it out, put a new one in, and be on your way. But obviously there's also, as I do with all my others, there's a recharge port. So it's enough talking about the internals. Let's take a look at them. First off, just as with all the others, remove the pommel, and it's got the custom end cap that I designed, just supposed to replicate the original MPP end cap. And then on the underneath side of the saber, there is the typical retention screw that I include, and I will include the proper hex key for it, which is a 5/64 hex key. It's an 832 set screw, and we'll just pull this guy right on out. It's kind of sticking right now because there we go, that adapter hadn't fully seated at the front of the saber. So let's take a look. We've got the chassis. It's the same design as I've been using. It's my design that I worked a little bit with 7 chambers on this thing, but this is ultimately my customized version of that. You've got the soundboard on the top, and you can see it is quite long. That tape, as I mentioned, is to prevent shorting because hopefully it doesn't fall out, but right in here you've got the pads for the battery and for the ground. Really just a lot of very important electrical connections that are terminated right there, and it's right on the edge of the board, and my fear was that it might touch the inside of the saber while in use, so I went ahead and put a little strip of tape over that to prevent that from happening. Otherwise the board is fully exposed, so you don't have to worry about it getting too warm. It'll be just fine. And then the micro SD card is just underneath here, so you can press it and pop it out, and there's enough room behind the board to reinsert it, no problem. There you can see the battery. It's as mentioned, Keep Power Sony VTC6 with a protection circuit that allows up to 15 amps of continuous discharge. There's our recharge port with the kill key, and the 28mm bass speaker. So let's go ahead and pull that kill key, and we can check out the sound fonts and such and the settings that are on this saber. This has 3 sound fonts, as is the case with any of the Spark 2 boards. The first one is the Vader 1 by Lord Blakov. That's the one I include on the vast majority of my builds, and it's just fantastic. Really one of the best. It's probably my favorite sound font overall. I hear it a lot though, so I tend to get a little bit bored of it, but it's neither here nor there. It is the best. It is my favorite Vader font right now. That could change, but it's fantastic. Let's go ahead and secure everything with the set screw. And the second font is the Essence Episode 1. That's standard on the board. Nothing too remarkable about it, but it is a really good sound font. And then the final one is All Too Easy, which is another, actually, it's a Vader font, and so it really fits quite well on this saber. For each of the sound fonts, I did tweak the lighting parameters a little bit, and that means that with the Vader 1, you're going to get a little bit more orange tint in that red, and then as you progress to the fonts, you're going to get more of a washed out, almost pink look, which really I think captures that original trilogy feel of the more washed out colors of the original trilogy. So you've got a couple options here to play with depending on what you're looking to do. So before we really get into this, let's also take a quick look at the blade, because normally I wouldn't talk too much about the blades, but because this blade has stuff in it, it's worth having a little bit of a discussion about. So at the end here you can see the PlecterPixel adapter. Nothing too remarkable about that other than the fact that the system itself is really awesome. Allows these blades to be easily removed, easily inserted, and it's very durable. The NeoPixel strings are attached obviously to that. The leads are soldered to that. I used the skinny style, the 3535 strings for this particular saber. I was a little bit concerned that the 5050 would have more shadowing because it's a wider PCB that they're mounted on. So I went with the skinny string. What that meant though was that I had to figure out a way to kind of create to beef them up a little bit, because when you're using a foam diffuser, those skinny strings kind of want to wobble around in there. So what I did was I got 9mm clear heat shrink tubing, cut it into sections so it was easier to apply, slid it over the top of the pixels, and then shrunk it down. One layer of that was really all I needed. It did a couple things that were kind of cool too. First, it added a little bit of rigidity to that string. You obviously want some flex, because if your LED strip, more technically, if your LED strip can't flex, you run a good chance of breaking it. So it can still flex, but the rigidity does help it, especially when I was trying to insert it into the tube, to keep it from bending and such. So the rigidity is appreciated. It adds a little bit of diffusion, obviously not much. It's clear heat shrink. It's not going to do too much there. But then that heat shrunk pixel string, which I should mention is 2 strings back to back of 125 pixels each. These are 144 pixels per meter strands that I'm using. I cut them down to 125 each, put them back to back. So 250 total pixels in this blade, which is a really good round number to use. It helps you with the current calculations or the drain. You know, it just makes things a whole lot easier. But also maintains the overall length. It's about 35 inches in the blade. So I put those inside of a Force FX diffuser. Now the reason I put those in the Force FX diffuser and I didn't use the Custom Saber Shop's was because I actually did purchase one of the Custom Saber Shop's foam inserts, and what I found was it doesn't actually fit when you're using one of the diffuser tubes, the plastic tubes, and this saber does have one of those white plastic diffuser tubes in it as well. So since I couldn't get it to fit, I just reused the original diffusion foam from the Vader saber from which this was converted. So reuse that foam. So now you've got the pixels, the heat shrink, the foam, and all that foam is then inserted into the plastic diffusion tube and then into this red enhanced day blade. And the enhanced day blades are supposed to be a little bit brighter than a standard white or clear blade. It's an alright effect, not my favorite, just because I don't think it adds a whole lot to the saber when it's powered on. That being said, it does look cool. It's a pretty cool color, and it fits really well with this the Vader aesthetic, especially if you're in a bright setting that even the NeoPixels can't power through. So, inserting it is just like any normal blade, and that's one of the beauties of this PlecterPixel system. Wasn't totally sold on it to start out with. I was planning on using GX16 connectors. I still have some. Still might do that so I can do in-blade recharge, but regardless, this is an awesome system and super, super easy to use. So simply insert it like you would any other standard non-component blade. Press it down until it stops, and then tighten that set screw. Don't need to over tighten it. It'll be just fine once it gets snug. So there we have it. Let's go ahead and turn this on. First font is going to be the Vader 1. See if I can get the boot sound to play. To just cycle through the fonts, it's actually kind of cool with the Spark 2. You twist it. If I can, I think it fell asleep on me though. So let's go ahead and power it. There we go. So the soundboard will go into a sleep mode after, I think I've got this set to like 125 seconds. Can't exactly remember, but it will go into a sleep mode. As you saw, and let's check this out just one more time because it's so awesome. I'm going to step back for you guys so you can see this fully. You've got that awesome boots, or that awesome ignition sound that sounds just like Vader as he's stepping into the hallway there at the end of Rogue One. You've got the blade extension that's kind of pretty well timed with the actual sound, and then a nice subtle flicker. Pressing the activation button here in the clamp reveals the blaster deflect. Very cool. Awesome. You've got, I don't exactly remember how many with this particular font package, but because the Spark 2 supports 99 sounds per font, this has more than enough swing sounds. And then you've got your clash. There we go. Just a really quick white flash. Nothing too crazy, but the quick flashes are much more movie-like. So there you have it. Let's go ahead and power it down and go to the next font. Like I said, there's your boots. That's the boot sound for Vader 1. If you twist it again, there's Essence Episode 1. This is a really deep, really good Sith font. I piped just a little bit of blue into this to help bring it towards a little bit of a pinker color, but it looks mostly the same. Again, several swing sounds. I think I'm getting a low battery here, guys. I think that's why you're seeing some of these effects doubling, but you can see really bright flashes. And our blaster deflects again. The other cool thing, and you're kind of seeing this here, is if you have a blaster deflect, like say this, and you keep moving the saber, it actually continues that blaster effect. Each time you stop, you get another deflect sound. So really kind of, I love that. Reminds me of really some of the higher end Plecter boards. So to have this on the entry NEC board is really, really cool. Let's go ahead and turn it off. And then we'll check out the last one here, which is all too easy.
Essence Episode 4.
There you go. kind of, I found it's easier just to kind of like give it a spin while holding the blade, and it'll change fonts rather easily then. And like I said, this one's more of a pinker color than the other two, which is made to kind of replicate an original trilogy look. See if I can. And when this one, the clash effect on this one is cool because you get not only the flash, but you get some flicker too, some instability in the blade after you make that impact. So it's kind of like it's recovering from the clash. Again, the localized blaster deflection all up and down the blade, very, very cool. And then the other feature I should mention that I didn't point out in the other fonts is that this actually does have a blade lockup. If you trigger a clash and then you press the button, the activation button, it'll start a lockup. Let's see if I can get that. There we go. Really cool. And the lockups on these NeoPixels are just awesome. Because you've got such even color up and down the blade, it's just fantastic. Let's go ahead and turn it off. And then finally there's saber tracks at the end. Now saber tracks on my previous NEC builds I haven't exactly loved because I had some button issues with one of the other Spark 2 builds that I completed. This time it works really, really well. So I've got the Imperial March on here just for fun. So let's go to saber tracks. See if I can get it to... There you go. Really takes a strong wrist flick. It automatically starts playing. Difference though. Previously with the Spark 2 you couldn't get the blade to light, or you weren't supposed to be able to get the blade to light in this mode. If you hold down the activation button, it'll extend. Now, you don't have your effects or anything, but it is lit. And then you just hold it down and turn it off. Then, with it off, you can just leave saber tracks by twisting the saber. And now we're back to Vader 1. So, I think that pretty well covers it, guys. This was an awesome build, so much fun to complete. I'm so glad that I was able to do this for the customer. I am willing to do NeoPixel builds for other interested customers, but I will warn you, 1, they take longer, 2, they are pricey. You're probably looking at a starting price of at least $450 for one of these. It just really depends on the options you want, but estimate around $450 as a base price. So definitely not cheap, but that's just because there are more parts and the parts are a little bit more expensive to source. So overall though, guys, this is just awesome. I'm going to be doing several of these for myself and guarantee you that. So you'll be seeing these again very, very soon. If you have any questions about this build or any of the others I've posted, be sure to post those in the comments, or you can shoot me an email. I don't mind answering or trying to help out whenever I can. I've been pretty busy with builds, so sometimes I don't get back to folks as quickly as I would like. But I certainly appreciate any kind of comments or questions that you might have. If you're interested in my build services, I will have a link in the description. I will warn you guys, I am not accepting quite as many commissions right now as I normally would. I'm just trying to, I'm digging out from under quite a queue that was created shortly after the holiday season. So we're still working through some of that and just getting kind of back into the swing of things there. So hope you guys understand on that front. But as always, if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and also subscribe, because there's much more Saber content on the way. Thank you guys.